All right, welcome in everybody. This is Fantom Sports in conjunction also with Sports and Money, kind of doing a collaboration together. I am Benjamin Parker tonight. We are working our way through the off season with several different experts from several different teams. Now that the draft is over, it's been 3 or 4 weeks over. Tonight we have for the Cleveland Browns, Marquis Appling. Marquis, how are you tonight, man?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's a pleasure to have you on. I have been wanting to have somebody on to talk about the Browns for months now. So you're like a godsend. I have been waiting for somebody, and here you are, man.
Right. Here I am for you right now.
Yes. All right. You know, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? All about Cleveland.
Yeah, all of it. Everything.
Yes. So, all right. Well, let's dive right in. And again, we'll talk more about where people can find your work at the end of the episode. But what's the feeling in Cleveland right now for the Browns? Coming off of last year, man, so much is going on. But how do you guys feel right now in Cleveland about your team? Are you excited? Are you a little nervous? What's the feeling?
So I think it's a little bit of uneasiness. So one group of fans are super excited, and another group of fans are kind of like, I don't really know. I don't really know. But undoubtedly, a lot of people are excited about the new quarterback addition that we've brought in. And the expectation is Super Bowl because the contract signings, the re-signings, the extensions, the free agents that we've brought in, everybody is excited. The ones that want to go there, they're kind of excited. You know, we got some of that Cleveland optimism where it's like at any minute something bad can go wrong. So the ones that want to go, we're going to go to a Super Bowl because it seems like the team is all in right now.
You know, and I'm not knocking Cleveland because I love the city and I love the franchise, but it feels like the Browns are one of those franchises historically that if it could go wrong, it has. And, you know, you think you've got an excellent chance to do something, then, oh, man, well, who saw that coming, you know? But that has to end at some point, right? It ended for the Cubs and the Red Sox over in baseball a few years ago. At some point, it has to stop, right? At some point, it has to quit.
Yeah, at some point, a few years ago in 2016, when it seemed like the thing around the city was, the city is just cursed all around, and then Cavs won the championship. So it stopped for them. So at some point, hopefully, it stopped for the Browns because with the Guardians now and the Cavs, it's really a Browns town. It really is a Browns town.
Well, let's go back just a little bit. I don't want to stay on this long, but in 2021, a lot of expectations heading into the season, and rightfully so. By the end of the season, I think at one point you're sitting at like 7-6, right? You still got some pretty good playoff hopes, but then continued quarterback problems and other problems kick in. The team loses 3 of the last 4. What was the end of last season like, all things considered? Because there was a lot going on last year.
By the end of the last season, everybody just wanted the season to be over. Like we mentioned earlier, it's like it's Cleveland, so if anything could go wrong, it would go wrong. So coming off the bye, we were 6-6. We had a game against Baltimore where we had just previously lost before the bye. We had lost in a close game where it seemed like we picked off Lamar Jackson 4 times. And it's like if the offense could just score a touchdown, this game could be over with. But the offense couldn't score. So then we played the Ravens again, coming off the bye, won that game in a nail-biter from a big play by Denzel Ward on a 4th and 7. And we had a little bit of hope. It seemed like, okay, we can make this final push. But then the whole COVID thing happened with the Las Vegas Raiders game where pretty much the entire team was out.
That was brutal, the Raiders game. I actually went back and watched that while I was at work last week. You still even had a chance to win that game, even with all the COVID stuff that was against you and the quarterback you had playing, who, like, you know, listen, no disrespect, but the quarterback you guys had on the field that night probably should not have been on the field for any team at any point last year, right? In all honesty.
Yeah.
And yet you still had a close game.
Yeah, and I was actually at that game. It was supposed to be a Saturday night game, but it ended up being a Monday night game. And they came back. They were down. It looked like the quarterback looked like a high school varsity quarterback. But then we made some plays, came back, and there was a 3rd and 3 and just needed a first down. And the thing about Browns fans are you can hear everybody in the stadium chanting Chubb, 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 Chubb. Well, if we're all chanting it, I'm pretty sure the Raiders knew what was going to happen. So we ran the ball, and we obviously didn't get the first down, and they came down and kicked the field goal.
A brutal loss. But again, life in Cleveland. Let's fast forward to this offseason where it just has not stopped. DeSean Watson is here. When and where he'll start, we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But before we hit Watson, let's talk about Baker Mayfield. I think the question I want to ask you, first of all, if Watson were not here and Mayfield was the guy heading into next year, let's forget all the off-field drama with Mayfield for a second. But if Mayfield was the guy heading into next year, how would you be feeling right now, just from an on-field standpoint?
I don't think there would be as much optimism surrounding the team as it is. I think last year everybody was excited because Baker Mayfield was playing better towards the end of the year. And then coming off of last season, I think a lot of people would say, I don't want to say make the excuse, but kind of make the excuse like, oh, we just have to wait for him to get healthy and then he'll be able to show who he was towards the end of the 2020 season. But I don't think there would be Super Bowl aspirations. I think it would be can the help elevate him enough to where you can at least get into a deep playoff run?
Which is not a horrible place to be as an NFL franchise. There are
right.
worse, but it's not where you really want to be, right? Reason for DeSean Watson being here. Now, again, before we hit Watson, now let's add in all of the extracurricular stuff with Baker Mayfield. And again, we can talk about who's to blame last year all we want, but Mayfield has a history of questionable behavior in terms of leadership and in terms of decision making and in terms of, whatever you want to talk about. The Browns still have him. It continues to get more bizarre. So at this point, what do you want to see happen with Baker Mayfield? Do you want him out of the building as quickly as possible, or do you want him to hang around for half a season? What do you want there?
I think I just want it to be closure. So whether they release him, whether they trade him, whether he sticks around for a possible Watson suspension, I just want it to be closure. Because listening to a lot of national media, it's the clown show. And it's like, we're not intentionally trying to be the clown show, but I just want to see closure. So if you had to pinpoint me to one particular thing, I would love to see him get traded. Just get traded and go play with the chip on your shoulder. Now it's fair for you to have the chip on your shoulder.
Totally understandable. And that's where I would be too. Now, the nerd side of me, I guess the roster building side of me, would love to hang on to him, maybe let him play next year if Watson's not available, et cetera, and then trade him when his value's back up a little bit. But then it's almost like a bad breakup, right? You get back to reality and you're like, this ain't going to work. This just ain't going to end well.
Yep.
So let's just get on with it as soon as we can.
Exactly. So, because a lot of things people are saying that, if this possible suspension for Watson is severe, there's a chance that he can come back and play. I don't really see that happening at all. I think at the end of last season, when he decided not to play in the final game against the Bengals, I think at that point it probably would have been really tough for him to come back this year, even though the front office was saying all of the right stuff. Oh, we want him back. I think it was going to be pretty tough for him to be the starting quarterback this year.
At the end of the day, I agree. No matter what we would all prefer to happen, I think that's about right. I think it's going to be really hard for him to make it back in the building and be a part of this team heading into next year, the way it sits and the way it ended last year. Enter DeSean Watson, who he came from my area in terms of college. I got to watch him here at Clemson a lot. Just an incredible talent, running and even more throwing. I have him firmly entrenched somewhere in the top 5 to top 7 quarterbacks. Yeah. And maybe as soon as Rodgers and Brady finally retire and get off the scene, you've got Watson, I think, by the time he grows up a little bit more in the top 3 somewhere, this is the guy. This guy can light you up. So talk to us about the excitement of having Watson in here once he finally gets on the field.
Pure excitement, because for the first time since probably Brian Sipe, Bernie Kosar days, there's a legitimate quarterback. And the funny thing about this entire trade in the offseason, if we go back to the 2017 NFL draft, Browns obviously took Myles Garrett first, but DeSean Watson was sitting there at 12.
Right.
And they traded with Houston, and Houston picked DeSean Watson. So it's kind of like life comes full circle. So it's kind of like they were meant to have DeSean Watson in the first place.
Right.
Because even before that draft, I listened to him. He did an interview with one of the ESPN reporters, and the report was he says he already feels like he's a part of the Cleveland Browns team. So I think yeah. So the fact that they didn't get him, me personally, I was a little disappointed. I think he was definitely my favorite quarterback coming out that year. And I remember watching that game that he played against Alabama where he took him on a game-winning drive. And I said, he should be the first overall pick. Nothing against Myles Garrett. He should be the first overall pick that year. And then when Dabo Swinney said he's the Michael Jordan of football, I said, I can definitely get behind that. So there's a lot of excitement when he does finally get on the field, because I think it's just going to be great to see, great to watch for the next 5 or so years.
I agree. To me, he checks all the boxes. He can run the football if you need him to, but he really doesn't need to. He's so good at throwing the football, but he's not just a gunslinger. This guy can read the defenses. This guy can throw deep. This guy can do timing routes. He can do everything. Yep. And we've seen him do it in come from behind style, like you just mentioned in college, but he's done it so many times already at the NFL level. He's done it with a bad franchise. He's done it with a bad offense. There is nothing he hasn't done except play for a winning team and go chase a Super Bowl for real. Right. I think on the field, I think this may be the best quarterback the Browns have ever had, even including Bernie Kosar. I love Kosar, but I don't think he ever had the talent that DeSean Watson possesses for sure.
Absolutely. If everything goes the way that it should, I think DeSean Watson should probably be up there in the top greats of Cleveland Browns. So he should Clevelanders will probably always have Jim Brown number 1. So then if everything goes well, DeSean Watson should probably be number 2 or 1A.
And I know there's some 80-year-old going to be watching this screaming at me about Otto Graham from the 1950s. I hear you, but this is different. DeSean Watson's a different kind of talent.
Yeah, and Otto Graham was pretty good too. He was pretty good back in the day. I've seen the highlights.
Yeah, we're not trying to disrespect Otto at all. Okay. Now, again, not to bash DeSean Watson, but not to ignore what other people are saying, and that is 22 women out there who are saying that there's some things that have gone on that shouldn't have. What do you think in general about what he's up against and what kind of a suspension he might be facing in this upcoming season?
So I think it's kind of hard because being on Twitter, hearing all of the things, you have people saying, oh, it's going to be something similar to the Trevor Bauer situation. You have some people saying you got to look at precedents in this situation where, like Big Ben, he was originally suspended for 6, appealed, and he got 4. So I think if I was to give a guess about the number of games suspended, I would think it was probably between 6 or 8. And maybe because as a Browns fan and a Browns reporter, that makes me feel better on the inside. Right. But I just don't really know how the NFL decides a suspension just because so many things off the field aren't settled yet. Now, we obviously know there aren't any criminal charges. Everything is just civil. And the civil lawsuits, just hearing this stuff daily, it's pretty messy. And it's a lot of inconsistencies on both ends, not just DeSean, but with the women as well. It's messy, and there's nothing standard or whatever to that you could just say for both sides.
Exactly. I think that's a good way to put it. We certainly don't want to ignore what's happening to some people in real life. Again, we weren't there. We don't know, but we don't want to ignore that. But once DeSean Watson gets back on the field, let me ask the question this way. Let's say it's 6 to 8 games, which I think sounds like what is probably going to happen, barring some really unforeseen action here by the NFL. I don't really see that. Let's call it 6 to 8 games. How realistic is it? Because by that point, it would be a year and a half since he played. I remember Michael Jordan back in the 90s coming back for basically the last month of the season and off of his retirement and playing in the playoffs. And it just wasn't the same Michael. There were moments, but it wasn't the same. It was the following year before he kicked back into full scale Michael Jordan, and everybody's afraid of him again. So, do you view this season maybe not as a giveaway, but as kind of a warm up for DeSean Watson to really take off next year, or do you have some serious hopes that this year could be an amazing year?
I think it'll be a little bit of both, because I believe I know from previous suspensions. I know when Kareem Hunt had his suspension, he was suspended for these amount of games, but then after week whatever, he was able to practice. So I think if there's a similar situation like that, if he's able to practice, because he's here now during doing OTAs before mandatory mini camps coming up in a few weeks. So he's here, he's practicing, and all the reports are he's looking pretty good. So I think it'll be a little bit of both. He's practicing, he's knocking the rust off. Hopefully he's able to practice all through training camp so that at least his body can get back used to doing what it was a year ago. So I think it's setting up for future success, but at the same time, I think we may get a little bit of a little preview this year as well.
I think no matter what. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just because I think that our schedule early on and the schedule all throughout, it favors the Browns a lot.
I think no matter what, no matter when he comes back, it's going to be an insane amount of excitement, not just in Cleveland, but all through the AFC. I mean, you have so many teams in the AFC who think this year could be our year. Well, it's only going to be their year for one team. Everybody else is going to be, runners up again. Yeah. Every game of the AFC is going to be lighting it up with punches and everything. It's going to be beautiful to watch.
It is. We have, I think, and if you ask me, my top seven, obviously you have Brady and Rodgers in the top 10, top 7. But then from there on, you have quarterbacks from the ages of 27 and down, which I think is exciting for football fans of all ages for the next 10 to 12, maybe even 15 years to just watch. I just remember watching the playoffs last year. That game between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes was insane. Patrick Mahomes only needed 13 seconds to go down and score. That is unreal quarterback play right there.
It was fascinating. I don't know how last year's playoffs could be any better, but they might be. This year's regular season might be better than last year's playoffs. That's in the AFC side I'm talking about. It's going to be fascinating.
And even the last game of the regular season, the Raiders and the Chargers, that football game.
Right.
It's just the quarterback play now is insane, and I'm glad that I'm living in a time where I can be able to watch it and not 20 years from now just hear about how good it was, kind of like how older people talk about the NBA in the 80s and how tough and everything it was. Now I can actually live through it and see it.
We are watching, man, every week. And again, you mentioned I remember missing out on a good part of the 80s, but yeah, you had Elway and you had Montana and you had Marino and you had the list just went on and on and on and on of these great matchups. We've got it now. Every week, two of these guys are going to be playing each other. It's going to be fantastic.
Yep. Especially in the AFC West. Like I'm looking at your board back there, the Chiefs, the Raiders, and the Broncos. There.
Yes.
I really want to see what Russell Wilson looks like in Denver. I really do.
It's been a couple of years since we've seen Russell Wilson with a legit roster, right? Not that he's been on a bad roster, but it's been a couple of seasons since we've seen him with really an upper tier kind of roster, and he has that now. Totally agree. It's going to be a mud fight in the AFC West this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to ask you, and this will be one of the last things we cover because we could talk about Watson all night, honestly. Kevin Stefanski, he's now in his third season, and I don't think he's on the hot seat by any stretch. But when you put Stefanski in and you already have a pretty good roster, not a perfect roster, but a pretty good roster, goes 11-5 the first year, 8-9 the second year. I think the question I would ask is this. If the wheels fall off, if Watson for some reason misses, say, most of the season instead of half of it, and you're left with a practice squad level quarterback playing a majority of the season or something like that, people aren't very understanding of that a lot of times, especially when it's your third season. So if Stefanski, for some reason, the Browns, and again, this is worst case, if they were to go, say, 5-12 or something because everything fell apart, would he be on the hot seat the following year? Or would he start to feel some pressure? Or do you think that he's got enough leeway with this year that he really doesn't have to worry about that?
I I think he has leeway with this year just because of understanding of the possibility of the suspension. They Andrew Berry, the general manager, he also gave DeSean Watson that regular deal contract, but then for his base salary this year, he only made it $1 million. So he
Right.
says he did it to sign up the free agents, but I think they already have the precautions in if something was to go wrong. So I think he has enough leeway now. If you have a starting 17 game DeSean Watson starting, and then you go 5-12, then absolutely, I think you'll feel the hot seat. But if you ever want to get on Brown's Twitter will say that Kevin Stefanski is on the hot seat if all the wheels just fall off next
Okay. And that's interesting to me. Now, me personally, this is where I'm gonna hit up next. I like Kevin Stefanski. I like
year.
the way he schemes. I like the way he does a lot of things. But how do you personally feel about Stefanski now that you've had 2 years to look at him?
Oh, I like him. I think it's pretty hard for a rookie head coach to win Coach of the Year, and he did
Right.
that. Like we already know that the system that he wants to run, it's proven. It has won so many Super Bowls in the past. It's one of those systems that stands the test of time, and it has held up. We can see his system down in Minnesota, and now I just feel like he has the best quarterback to fit that system, and he can evolve in that a little bit. So it's not just a run. Now you can add in some RPOs with the great running back tandem that the Browns have with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. If you add in DeSean Watson, the threat of him running the ball himself and then doing some of the passing that Watson can do, I think it's a setup for a pretty deadly offense. But I personally like him too. I think he reminds me a lot of a young Bill Belichick. When you want an answer from him, he's not going to give you an answer.
No.
He's pretty much mild tempered, and I really love the fact that him and Andrew Berry are on the same page.
I agree, and I think everybody loves Stefanski in year one, but I think I have just as much respect for him coming off of year two because there was so much going on with the Baker Mayfield. I think there was stuff going on with Mayfield that even maybe we didn't know about behind the scenes before it started getting so public and so ugly. So I think to even keep this team fighting for a playoff spot last year, I mean, with all of that going on, I think speaks volumes to his ability to, keep things consistent, keep things stable. And now, oh, by the way, you're going to have one of the best quarterbacks in football. So let's see what you can do with it when it gets here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, because like you were saying, with some of the stuff off with Mayfield off the field behind the scenes, I know, and watching some of his press conference after the games, he would be calling out Stefanski's play calling, and it's like, oh, why didn't we do this or why didn't we do that? And it's like from what I was hearing last year, he was injured, and they kind of had to kind of stop him, hold him back from doing certain things that he wanted to do, even though he's like, hey, I can do this. You can't. So he was questioning that. He would call some of the play calling out in the press conferences. And yeah, like you said, for him to still have the team competing for a position and really 8-9, I know it's under 500, but all you have to do is win one of those games. You win that Raiders game,
right?
And you're right in the thick of things. Right in the thick of things.
You are. I don't know exactly how 22 is going to turn out. I don't think anybody does, but I think in 23, 24, and 25, I think the Browns with Watson and Stefanski and the other guys on the roster, which it'll change some, but they seem to know how to do it. I think to me it looks like another heavyweight boxer has entered the field, and they are going to be delivering some body blows and some uppercuts for the next several years to come, even in a crowded AFC. It looks to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this team and with the quarterback play of Watson, they're going to be right in the thick of things. If you ask me, I would have Patrick Mahomes, probably Josh Allen, and the only reason I say Josh Allen right now is because Watson hasn't played in a year, and we don't necessarily know when he will play. But I still look at that game where he played the Chiefs, even though they lost. That I blame that loss more so on Bill O'Brien, but he was still going toe-to-toe with the Chiefs.
And I agree. I'm not really necessarily talking about Watson off the field now, but in terms of on the field play, This guy is quarterback royalty. And for those of you who don't believe it, go back and watch the games in Houston. Look at the statistics, watch him in Houston. This is a power player in terms of quarterbacks, and he's going to show it, I think, even more. Maybe in 22, but certainly in 23 and beyond. I think he's going to be showing it. I think Cleveland is just going to be ecstatic every year to see what he can do. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting, and just seeing some of the little snippets of it this year right now in OTAs. I know they're not in pads yet, but I was looking at a couple of things earlier, and everybody's just praising how effortlessly he throws the deep ball. Just watching compared to Mayfield, it's like he had to put everything in his body to throw the deep, and DeSean Watson is just effortless.
That's an excellent point. Again, I know it's pads. You can see the same thing in Houston, and you can see the same thing at Clemson University. So effortless how he throws the ball deep and how he runs the football even between the tackles. It's all effortless. I don't want to say it's easy for him, but he makes it look easy.
Mm-hmm. The way he plays kind of reminds me of Michael Vick. Right. And the way Michael Vick played was very effortless. He was one of the smoothest runners that I've ever remember watching play football. Just one of the smoothest runners ever.
Watching Michael Vick play in college was like watching an Olympic athlete play against high school guys. When he got in the NFL, he was still making a lot of people look bad. But again, there's a lot more serious athletes in the NFL. But watching Vick play in college, it was just ridiculous, to be honest about it. It was like watching 11 people chase one.
It really was. But, yeah, the way he played, it was effortless, and he made it look easy.
Right. And we see the same thing with Watson. Marquis, we could do this all night. I appreciate it. This has been an awesome show. Thank you so much for enlightening us on the Browns. I've really enjoyed it, man. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Marquis Appling, everyone. Marquis, give them one last word where they can find your work. If you're on Twitter, if you want people to know that, tell them that. Just tell people kind of where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at Fantom Sports Industries.com. Just did another article about Browns re-signing David Njoku yesterday. Got a few more articles up. Just go ahead and check that out. Don't have a Twitter right now, but I'm sure that's to come in the future.
And that is just fine, Marquis. Thank you so much. We've enjoyed it, man. Hope you have a good one, okay?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. This is Sports and Money. This is Fantom Sports kind of collaborating together. So from wherever you're watching, this has been the Cleveland Browns Report. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. We'll have Marquis back on here again. We'll talk more about the Cleveland Browns. Good night, everybody. Have a great one. Thank you.